What about universities? Do you think they get too much of a leg up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's massive subsidies in universities. And the kind of overheads they have are absolutely horrific. Like teaching undergraduate psychology, and I know that because I've got some pretty direct information. They might charge $18,000 a year in fees and give about $3,500 to the department to actually teach the rest is all overheads and vice chancellor salaries and funding, subsidising research and all kinds of things. So they're monumentally inefficient organisations.
So welcome back to another episode of the Jim's Group podcast, which is called the Jim's Cast, and I'm here with Jim, and we're on a Monday morning in sunny Melbourne today after a weekend of hail on the farm, didn't you, Jim? You just told me before off camera that you had a bit of hail up on there. You got hailed on a few times, and
yeah, I go out when it's not raining too much and do some farm work, and then if it gets really a downpour, it starts to hail. I get inside and sit in front of my nice stove, freestanding. What do you call it? A wood stove.
Yeah, and you've got so you're quite actively on the farm, aren't you? Most weekends you're away there, and you get out there, and that's a lot of where your thinking time about your business is actually done, and actually doing some work and doing some vegetables and all that sort of stuff. And
yeah. I just last weekend I dug up my put all the potatoes in, planted in my giant potato patch, and I planted string beans, and what do you call it? Other kinds of green manure between the rows, and also spread aged manure over another big patch I've just dug up. So it was great fun. And then I was cutting down bracken and weeds and things. I do about 4 or 5 hours a day at the weekend.
And you eat all your produce as well, don't you? All your produce you make, like with the
But you can't eat all of it. It's too much. I mean, we couldn't eat that many potatoes. We don't. We get tons of it. We sell it actually.
You actually sell it? Okay, there you go. All right, so let's. We've actually had a few topics which we've done in the podcast before, but they were actually ones that Jim and I put down. But we've actually had a first ever listener question in. So this is from Andre Barber, and we thank you for this one, Andre. And it's about education. And the question was this to Jim: was what's Jim's take on the current education system and its suitability for the future? There is an increasing number of Gen Zs who are choosing alternative pathways to university as they find the value it provides is not aligned with their future needs. Does Jim see a need to reform in the system, and does he himself hire based on a piece of paper?
Well, I don't hire based on a piece of paper. It's the last thing I look for. In fact, when I'm looking at somebody, I would look for character first of all. Anything indicates character, including extracurricular activities. I would look for experience. And frankly, I pretty well ignore qualifications. I don't even know what my staff are qualified as. Honestly,
yeah.
I think bits of paper are complete rubbish and meaningless. Yes, there's real problems with the way we look at education. There's this whole push that everybody has to go to university. And university itself doesn't teach you a great deal about almost anything. Even if you want to be a lawyer, it just teaches you the basics how to learn to be a lawyer. It's so ineffectual as a way of preparing people for life.
This is coming from you who is an academic, or you have a PhD, so you're someone who's been quite involved in the system.
I've been through the whole process, and I don't regret that because I followed a particular line of scientific inquiry, which I think is important, and I think could be important to the world. But an arts degree, I think, is an incredible waste of time. And I think what the problem too is that they're so heavily subsidised by the government, and yet apprenticeships, which is basically dealing with people who aren't quite so academic, are massively underfunded. It's like there's some sort of government policy that says, well, we can do without plumbers and electricians, but you never have too many art historians. I mean, that's a lunatic idea, the practical trades. And I think there should be a lot more money put into trade qualifications and basic qualifications. And actually that system should be modified too, to accept that it's crazy. For example, if you want to do roof plumbing, which is just basically sheets of iron, you have to do a 4-year apprenticeship course. So a system of education that allow people to actually learn to do those sorts of things a lot more quickly and just be assessed. A good example of that is that we teach people to build fences. And fencing is a fantastic business. It's very lucrative. There's masses and masses of work to be done. So you can make a great living. We teach a person 8 weeks from scratch, and they're good fencers. Now, why can't we apply that sort of model? Basic trade training, subsidised by the government, subsidise employers to take on trainees, and put some effort into that, instead of more and more useless courses. And the more people are doing these courses, it's not as though they're actually doing anything. It's just that, well, you've been at university for 3 or 4 years, you can't be a complete null. I think in terms of what they learn, it's mostly pretty useless.
Yeah, and I think it's only set for one type of learner. You've got to be someone who's able to sit there and read a bunch of material and and then go and do your own, be responsible for yourself as a learner. That's one type of person. We obviously know many different people learn in various different ways. And this is something in training we're actually going to look at doing, because most of the people who come to training are probably more the hands-on probably type of people, as opposed to someone who can sit there and read a workbook and then basically be assessed based on that.
Well, you'd be surprised how many people have university degrees who come and learn to be lawnmowers and fences and the rest of it, and actually do pretty well. But there's this whole notion that there's this spread between the educated elite and the unskilled people who are going to work at $18 an hour at McDonald's. It's completely ridiculous. There's this whole area of the trades and services such as we offer at gyms, where there's incredible demand, and actually the income is pretty good. A typical gym's mowing franchisee or fencing or anything like, you're going to make $100,000 or so a year. I mean, that's a decent sort of living. You can support a family. It's good because you can split income if your wife wants to stay home and look after kids and this kind of thing. So there's great opportunities in the area of manual work. And I think the big problem is there's this prejudice against working with your hands. I'm actually quite proud of the fact that my hands are callous because of my farm work.
Yeah.
I like to work physically, and I'm proud of the fact that I mowed lawns for 15 years, and I did a good job. And I think it's good for you healthy. It's good for your spirit too. I think this contempt for manual labour it's actually pretty characteristic of decadent civilizations. People just want to get away from doing real work and get into just mind stuff.
But why do you think that narrative is then pushed so hard by people's parents? Obviously, that narrative, in certain cultures, it's basically you must get a 99 in your VC or you're a failure, and you must go to uni and be a doctor or a lawyer, and that's it. Why do you think that narrative is so entrenched in people?
I think it's just a general snobbery. It's the same thing. It's very bad in places like Saudi Arabia, for example. They're trying to get businesses going and industries going, but everybody wants to work for the government in a desk job, and so they have these massive bureaucracies that just do nothing but hold economic welfare back. It's a curse, education at that level. Now, there's a big difference. Certain kinds of education, like scientific education, is incredibly useful, and you do need good training to that, or to be an engineer, for example, especially in the days when engineering is a lot more scientific. But if you look at times in the past when people wealth really grew, it wasn't educated people at universities. In fact, go back to England in the late 18th, early 19th century, which transformed the world with the Industrial Revolution. Now, that didn't come out of Cambridge or Oxford. Those people there were completely irrelevant. It was people who were literate, but who were engineers and tinkerers and at a later stage, people like Edison or Ford or those kinds of great leaders. They learnt by doing, and they learnt by doing in a practical way. And I think we need more people who are not afraid to get their hands dirty, and they're not afraid to just work hard and not think that you have to be doing some snobby managerial type job. There's a wonderful book which I referred to before, called The Millionaire Next Door, and it points out that the typical American millionaire is not a techie or a manager or a corporate executive. He's actually someone like me. He's somebody who does basic cleaning, janitorial, building, whatever services, and grows that business and becomes successful at it. That is a golden route, and we should be focusing much more on that kind of thing in our education system and getting away from this. Everybody has to go to university and do an arts degree, which is just insane.
Well, obviously university is now a big business. You obviously tell by their marketing. They have good advertising campaigns for a lot of stuff, and it is a business. It's our second biggest export or whatever it is. Yeah. So, because for me, you're right in what you said, but the services industries, I don't see there being much of a push from the government at all to really promote apprenticeships, to promote this sort of this stuff. And for me, it seems to be almost a marketing problem, or the government actually doesn't even want to push it because of the money that's involved with the university side.
You talk to employers about apprenticeship, and they say basically because of all the costs and the limitations and the study time and stuff, it's a losing proposition. I do it because I believe in the industry. So the fact that the government gives stuff all in terms of support it just holds us back so badly. And my the senior pastor of my church actually he's a great guy actually, and he dropped out of school at 14 and became an apprentice. And in his 20s he was offered to manage a factory and stuff. He's just and now he's running this huge in effect business, which is to do with the church, school, everything else. He just wasn't academic, but he's a great guy. He's got great initiative. He's got great people skills. There's a lot of people out there who are just simply getting buried by the fact that they have this need for pieces of paper education. You know, even learning white collar skills, there's a really big question of whether university is the best place. And a good example of that is Brendan Hill. Now this is a kid who was a sort of a part-time programmer. He just did it as fun. At the age of 14 years and 9 months, the earliest age he was allowed to, he came to work for me full-time as a programmer. And he was a great programmer. And actually, I made him head of the programming department. I mean, he was 16, 17 years old, and he was running the thing. He's now got, masters and all kinds of stuff. That he's got a great career. But this is somebody who never actually finished high school. And he's actually one of the best educated people you could imagine.
Mm.
So I would think that apprenticeships should go a lot further. I would love to be in a situation where you could take some of these bright kids at the age of 13, 12 even, and put them to work on real jobs and have them learn on the job. And you'd end up with a vastly better, more accomplished workforce than wait till a person goes through all this years and years of paper study and stuff and then end up with some degree.
Mm.
The best time to learn a skill is quite young. We delay it too long. People are most creative in their early 20s. Look at the great scientists like Newton and so forth. Most of their great discoveries were made when they were very, very young. It's a mistake. I think our education system actually is holding us back.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's got a big perception problem. I know when I was in school, which wasn't that long ago, but we had a program called VCAL, whereas the kids who weren't considered as bright or they were going to go do an apprenticeship or drop out of school early, they were put into VCAL, and there was a stigma attached to them. Oh, you're a dumb kid, you go do VCAL. And a lot of these people are now, some of them own their own plumbing companies, or they might be a builder and earn a lot more money than, I would say, a lawyer working in a firm, based on they can work when they want and they have that flexibility. For me, it's more a perception of a marketing issue, really. How do we market this to these kids? That actually, these case studies, if they actually look into it, if you want to make your wealth, going down that path is far more higher chance of success than the other one, and you're probably going to be a lot more happier too.
So not everybody's suited to be an academic. It's a different kind of skill. And this proliferation of degrees is crazy. I mean, you need degrees to do more and more stuff, like to work in a childcare centre now. You need some sort of degree. I mean, who would you rather have looking after your children? I said this before. Somebody who's been a successful mother, raised 3 brilliant kids, or somebody who's got a paper qualification, never changed a nappy in her life. I mean, really, it's people should be judged by what they can do. And that's what we try to do at gyms very, very much. People in gyms, it's very meritocratic. We just don't care about degrees, qualifications, or anything. But we put a ad in for a basic job in finance, like, paying $45,000 per year. We get 100 inquiries, half of them with degrees. How absurd is that? How ridiculous. All these people, there's more people, according to what my son said when he was a law student, there's more law students in Australia than there are lawyers. What on earth are they spending all this time getting this useless education for?
I agree. I did a law degree and it's pretty useless. I did law commerce and I wish I didn't do it.
Well, James is actually one of the exceptions because he went to what most people would consider a third-rate university, which is Deakin. He's got a job. He got 2 job offers straight out of law school, and they're trying to make him a partner in the firm 2 years later. But James is this very special person. He's got incredible people skills. He can make everybody like him, and he's just very good at what he does.
Yeah,
He wasn't necessarily brilliantly academic, but he's got the skills to succeed in life.
Well, I think soft skills are becoming way more important in business now. Empathy, for example, is a massive one. Empathy, having EQ, emotional intelligence. Digital literacy is massively important now as well. But there's a lot more skills that you just can't learn, that you can only learn by actually doing that and being in a work environment. But I want to take it back to what you said before, though. You said you're higher on character. This is at the very start. Now, can you break down to people what is character? What is character to you? What's involved under there?
Well, character comes out of seeing what somebody does more than anything else. It's very hard to judge character just by an interview. And I wouldn't say I was a particularly good interviewer, but if I can see somebody in the business who is, to a large extent, it's somebody who cares about what they do, who puts thought and effort into what they do. Like, you're a perfect example of somebody who came in with an unskilled, minimum wage, temporary job, got put into insurance as an assistant there, and then when I used to come in and talk, you would always be coming up with ideas. We should be doing this, or this website doesn't work, or this website's better. You just had this interest in what you were doing, which made you completely stand out. So you're now one of the company's top managers, effectively. And And it's the same thing all the way along. In fact, most of the useful things you do are things that I didn't give you to do. It's things you came to me with. So I look for that. And I look amongst our franchisees and franchisors, look people who come up with ideas and initiatives, and we try and recruit them in various ways.
Yeah, so you're saying initiative is a good one you look for, which is under that. Let's say the character banners here. Obviously, initiatives you put under there. What other things would you put under there?
Well, somebody simply cares about what they're doing, and it's fairly obvious once somebody's working for you. I'm not very good at picking people to interview, but if I talk to somebody about what they're doing with their job, it becomes incredibly obvious that they have a passion for what they do. They care about it. They have a sense of purpose. Like in gyms, we're very goal-oriented in a sense. We put our franchisees very high, and we also put customer service very high too, because that's also a way of looking after franchisees. So if you see somebody who's thinking about better ways to do this, like our wonderful people like Leah in compliance, and Chloe and Angie in there too, and
the documents team, they produce a lot of good stuff. Yeah,
and you get someone like Eugene who comes in at the weekend. We had a power outage at the weekend, and he comes in to fix things. And he's like that. He'll work all night if we need to. He's just got a passion for it. He's got his real heart in what he does, and basically, the people I look for are people who care about what they do, not necessarily even the most experienced, but the most who've got their heart in it.
So I'd say that most of the people who are long term here would all be very similar in regards to what you just said then. And Eugene's a prime example. Obviously, when the generator needs to be fired up at whatever time of night, he's always here. If the server goes down, he obviously knows about it, and he has to get on 1 a.m, 3 a.m, 4 a.m on the weekend sometimes.
He doesn't think about it. He never complains about it. He never asks for it. He doesn't even ask for a pay rise. I mean, I do keep on paying him more because that's a result, but it's not. He doesn't ask for it. He's great. He has a passion for security, and that's when it comes from the heart. I mean, it's almost unfair, but you look at someone like Archie, for example, who's in divisional support.
Yeah.
I would say he could be here until 8, 9 o'clock at night. I often make jokes about it. I say, look, you're a bit of a slacker. I saw you going home before midnight twice last week. But he just loves what he does, and he believes in what he does, and he believes in supporting people. And you look at franchisors who care about their franchisees genuinely, not just for the point of view of making money, but mainly because he wants to help them to be successful, or she wants to. And that coming from the heart. Someone like Sharon Connell too is a perfect example. She's a great salesman, the best salesperson we've ever had in Jim's group, but she cares more for her franchisees than any person I've ever met. She's just got, it's that heart thing, it's that attitude thing that matters more than anything.
Yeah, and so it's quite interesting for you, because when you said character, you say those couple of things, which is important. And you, as you said, you admit yourself you're not a good interviewer. So obviously, when you get someone into the company, and obviously, the reason I bring this up, because in Jim's book, there's a chapter called Serial Firer, but then you have underneath that a blurb about character. So for you, you're always willing to give people a go, but as soon as you don't identify that they've got the right character that you think will make them a valuable member of the team, you quite often will move on pretty quick and get someone else.
At the very senior level, I've had real problems in finding the right kind of people. I think now we're getting close to the stage of having it right. But I'm a terrible interviewer. I just don't know how to pick people, but I know it when I see it. And the funny thing is, we get people who don't work out here and they go work for somebody else, and they think, why don't you learn from us?
That happens quite a bit, yeah.
Because they say, oh, you work for national office, that's a big prestigious thing. Well, but why aren't you working there any longer?
Yeah, that's a very, very valid point. So what would be some things, what would you, obviously we talked about it a little bit in brief, but let's say specifically, obviously we're making the trades more attractive, obviously giving people who are running these businesses to employ apprentices, give more incentives to employ people. What about universities? Do you think they get too much of a leg up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's massive subsidies in universities. And the kind of overheads they have are absolutely horrific. Like teaching undergraduate psychology, and I know that because I've got some pretty direct information. They might charge $18,000 a year in fees and give about $3,500 to the department to actually teach the rest is all overheads and vice chancellor salaries and funding, subsidising research and all kinds of things. So they're monumentally inefficient organisations. They really are. That's why we're starting our own institute.
Yeah.
As a private enterprise, competition plus some aspects. I think we can do a far better job, far more cost effectively.
Yeah, that's ISN. So anyone who wants to know about Jim's Institute, obviously ISN. Is it the Institute for Social Neuroscience, what it's called?
That's the one, yeah.
That's the one. That's where you do your research as well, which people can find out more. So is there anything else you want to leave us with today, Jim, on this one about the topic of education?
Nah, that's fine. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and try some real jobs. I would actually say that if you want to actually succeed in life, one of the best places to go to is McDonald's.
Yeah.
Learn about business and about customer service and about discipline, and what they do is quite remarkable. I have enormous admiration for McDonald's, not their food, but their system of business is fantastic. They're a great company.
Well, one of our Ask Jim guests was Stan Kay, who was a McDonald's manager until the age of 24.
Yes.
And then he came in, and he's a great franchisee because obviously they're used to following a system and protocol and that. And when he became a franchisee, he just followed everything to the T, and turned over 300,000 in his first year of business.
Yeah.
Which for me, that's the best testimonial we can ever have. 300.
No university course is going to give you that kind of training. I would say it's a far better way to go. And actually, if you look at the period of maximum growth in the Western world, which was basically around the 70s and that period, 60s, 70s, 80s, around there, the people who did that were not on the whole university educated. Not at all, because that was before mass university education. And as more and more people are educated, what you find is that our economic growth is our productivity growth is actually slowing. Now, I don't think that one's the cause of the other, but the education itself is just some magic panacea which really just doesn't work. Practical learning of life. And I think many people would be far better off just going out and starting a business, getting a job in some place like McDonald's, just learning how the world works, how people work, how to be a manager. And the other thing too is that there's far too much emphasis on intelligence these days, on brains. There is one thing that intelligence, IQ, is a very good predictor of, and that's your actual academic results. If you've got a high IQ, you're more likely to do well in school and in university. But it's got remarkably little to do with success in life. The best estimate is that you can judge, it's about 4% of your success in life can be judged on your IQ. And past about an IQ of 120, which is a huge chunk of the population, it makes no difference whatsoever. In fact, the most successful people are notoriously not the smartest.
That's very interesting, Jim. We'll probably leave that there. It's a great little bit of chunk of information. So make sure you subscribe to the Jim's Cast on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcast. Obviously, it's a video on YouTube as well, so subscribe there. If you have any topics or questions, like Andre Barber did, thank you for that question, please email them to socialmedia@jims.net, or you can comment on the video and we'll put them to Jim as well. So thank you for that one, Jim, and thanks for your time.